As an avid miner, last week's ISC took some time for me to digest, and that's how I tend to approach these things. I like to leave the tea bag in, so to speak, and allow ideas to brew for a bit. But the proposed overhaul for mining in 3.19 definitely brings with it some really interesting changes. So in this video I wanted to provide a rundown of them for anyone who hasn't caught up yet, and then sprinkle a few of my own opinions in on the direction. If this sounds good to you, then grab yourself a cup of tea while I roll the intro, and then let's get into it. Hello and welcome back, or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and today we're going to break down the changes outlined in last week's ISC, and then discuss whether they hit the nail on the head for notably improving mining gameplay. We're promised a complete update to all the various mining lasers, gadgets, modules and consumables in 3.19. The devs are playing this one very close to their chests. I scrubbed through the whole video and at no point could I see a HUD display showing off stats, etc. So beyond the fact that there will be changes, very little is known. One thing the devs are clearly aiming for though is that different types of rocks will require different optimal setups, so you'll have to put more thought into different builds as opposed to relying on just one best build, so to speak. We've also got the addition of a couple of new mineable resources. At the simple end we've got the introduction of iron as a resource, fleshing out basic materials, alongside things like copper and aluminium. Expanding out hand minables, we've also got the addition of genolite, a very valuable gem found in caves. I liked the comments and the framing here that it's not going to be something you specifically target as a miner, as the ship mining profession will ultimately still be more profitable. But that it would be a good reason to have an orbit mining attachment at the ready as you're exploring some of the new caves that are going to be added. So as long as there's other content that is dragging you towards those caves, this could just be a little perk, a little extra for any explorers out there. The mining HUD is also getting some love with a new lick of paint, which we can see in this screen grab here. I think the clustering of the laser intensity next to the charge level does look really cool. Particularly if you're newer to the loop, having the laser intensity over on the other side is a bit annoying and doesn't let you focus in one area. Having it set up this way will let you easily keep your focus in just that one place. To be honest, I do think that some of the information that's being added is maybe a little superfluous, like your distance to the rock. But I do appreciate that what they're doing is try and make things more accessible for newer players, which is always cool. That said, a key feature I would absolutely love to see, but there was no mention of, would be the ability to adjust the brightness and default color settings of your mining HUD. With the variety in planetary surfaces, times of day and laser effects, it's impossible to have a one-size-fits-all HUD which is always comfortably visible. So some degree of customization over this aspect would be amazing in the future. 3.19 is also going to see the introduction of distinct locations for materials. This is a cool idea, tying certain mats to locations, which in time will encourage people to travel. The example given was that aluminium would only be found around Crusader, while copper would be specific to Microtech, although this could all change. Asteroid belts might continue to be more attractive for their more diverse range of mats as well. This was particularly interesting since it was stated that the change is about future-proofing ahead of the implementation of a fully fledged crafting system, which if you've watched some of my other videos, you'll know that I'm incredibly into. And this ensures that players have to travel around to source mats for recipes. But to me this has even more potential since it creates reasons for players to interact, trading the resources native to their corner of the system with each other. This could go even bigger when we look at the possibility for certain resources to be specific to a certain system. For instance, maybe to make some of the higher level crafts, you'd need to go and get mats that were only found within a dangerous frontier system such as Pyro. And if you're willing to stick your neck out and put in the effort to go and get those, then those commodities might fetch a premium from players who wanted a more peaceful life in a safer system, but still wanted to participate in that high-end crafting. These changes could also have quite an interesting knock-on effect to trading, and introduce a reason for ships like the Whole Sea, which is also slated for a 3.19 release. Part of my confusion about the Whole Sea has been what exactly it's going to trade. Right now in Stanton, there are hardly any trading loops that involve moving commodities from space station to space station, and those that do exist are barely economical. But this is effectively what the Hull C and D and E are tied to, they can't enter orbit. But with these changes, could we maybe see certain bulk commodities for sale and in demand at low orbital stations like Everest Harbour and Port Tressler, providing a trade route for Hull pilots? But the really huge part of this update is proposed changes to multi-crew mining. The age-old argument of why would we use a mole when we could use 4 prospectors has been a long-standing one in the SC mining community. Ostensibly, you have the opportunity to fully accrue a mole with 4 players, but if you do that versus having 4 prospectors, you're actually giving up one of the mole's main advantages, its additional cargo, with 4 prospectors offering 32 SCU more than a single mole's 96 SCU at 128. In terms of lasers, you also outperform given that you've got 4 versus 3 on a mole. The mole still carries some advantages in its current state in terms of range and speed, given that it can equip a size 2 XL1 drive and has the fuel tanks to match it. And I do love the mole just as a platform to get new miners into the loop, since you can remove all of the hassle of flying the ship so they can focus on lasering rocks. However, under the proposed changes for 3.19, it looks like CIG are addressing this imbalance. Not by buffing the mole as some of us might have expected, but by nerfing multi-prospector mining. The retconned lore excuse is that the mole's onboard computers allow for synchronicity between its lasers, meaning that when applying multiple lasers to a single rock, you get the long-standing benefits of different lasers working in tandem, stacking their buffs with each other. But do the same with 2 prospectors, and rather than reducing the difficulty of a rock, you'll increase its difficulty through heightened instability. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure on this approach. Back at the start when I was playing solo, the first real friend I made in SC was someone I would go out alongside in my prospector. We both worked independently in the same sort of area, but when we came across a rock that we couldn't crack on our own, we'd group up and help each other out. And it was a good compromise because we didn't have to commit to always be online together, we had our individual prospectors, but we got a first introduction to sort of the great world of working together and being in a little org. At least this will provide a good reason for the mole versus the prospectors, and I think there is still a lot of room in ops for including both ships, maybe having a mole with a couple of operators on board to make the initial cracks, with a small pack of prospectors following behind capable of making secondary breaks on the pieces the moles leave behind. I know some people have suggested the mole should get a corresponding nerf when being used solo to give the prospector some room to shine, but to be completely honest, I'm fine with the mole just being a superior ship. It would still effectively be balanced. The mole costs quite a chunk more than the prospector does at 5.1 million versus 2.1 million. Nobody complains that the Arrow is a better dogfighter than the Aurora. Another big update in the multi-crew mining area appears to be a change in how the mass of a rock is calculated, with different ores having higher density and therefore scaling up the mass, while others are more porous and therefore don't have as significant a mass. There wasn't a lot of detail on this, but I would assume that this will be a way to gate higher value materials behind multi-crew mining. For instance, Quantanium might have a high mass multiplier, so what we now see as a 5k mass rock with say 40% Quantanium could become a 10k mass rock without actually containing any more value in terms of SCUs. This will all just push people into multi-crew mining with the dedicated multi-crew mole, if they want to hit those higher values. And it has the potential to remove some of the I can make more mining alone argument. If you'd like a taste of multi-crew mining, or practically anything else multi-crew, then there's no need to wait for 3.19 though. Please feel free to hop on over to the Frontier Community Discord and we'll get you into a crew. Just link in the video description down below. So when I was writing this video, this final section was the one I struggled to frame, because I think overall these are looking like really cool changes. I think it's worth calling out the elephant in the room here. I want to be absolutely clear that I'm not a game developer, I'm just an enthusiast. My opinions are just that, they're one sweaty mining nerd's opinions, and obviously without a window through into the backdoor of CIG, my understanding of why they're making certain changes lacks full context. I also don't want people to walk away from this thinking I'm someone who's afraid of change and salty that my mining guides are all going obsolete in a few months. I'm not. This is actually a factor of SC that I enjoy, constantly try to keep up as systems are iterated upon is part of the challenge. But the issue is that the proposed changes to mining don't give mining its big bang moment to my mind. And the reason they don't is that a big element missing from mining has nothing to do with the mining gameplay itself. It's the development of the wider ecosystem that mining's meant to form one part of. So part of the reason we've been doing loads of work recently at Frontier on salvage is that it does open up the possibility for ops that involve merging multiple gameplay loops. So the next point at which mining will make a great leap forward to my mind isn't further advancement of the mining loop itself, it's when other stuff catches mining up. Like when exploration and scanning are more developed to the point where we're incentivized to use pathfinders like the Terrapin or explorers like the Connie Aquila to locate valuable resources over the scanners of our prospectors or moles. Or when ship-based refineries come online so we don't have to return to base at the refinery after each find, we can hand it over to our expanse and have them refine it on site. And that also opens up the possibility of cargo ships ferrying either raw ore back to a refinery station or taking the processed mats from the refinery ship to sell. Even better would be seeing the crafting system come online, so potentially we feed the mats into a crafting focused ship that builds stuff for our org on the fly, or that could be transported for sale by our haulers at even higher prices as finished or semi-finished goods. And if this all leads to us being out in the field longer, then restocking and repairing our ships on the move becomes even more important, giving those players who want to specialise in support gameplay a more meaningful way to participate. When all of this comes into being around the mining loop, it creates not only an awesome situation for miners, who if they're part of an organised group now get to spend almost 100% of their game session doing the part they love, cracking rocks, but it also creates all this gameplay for other players who are really keen on the other loops that complement it, such as exploration, hauling, refining and support. I'm absolutely not making any form of harebrained demand, add this game loop please CIG, work on this rather than this. I'm more than happy to patiently wait for these mechanics to turn up when they do. But more I'm highlighting that I think that this is the thing that's really bottlenecking mining as a gameplay loop at the moment. The other elephant, sorry I should have mentioned there were two, is that until there's some form of more developed economy in SC, there's going to just be a new mining meta regardless of how the loop has changed. It will be hard to get away from there being one commodity to rule them all. Right now that's Quantanium, but even if you change this, how do you avoid it just becoming something else? And if one commodity is worth more than all the others, then why wouldn't I focus on mining that? If I'm focused on mining just that, then there will be a particular set of lasers, gadgets and or modules that is the best thing for that. And maybe that min-max strat will push people towards multi-crew, which in itself will be very cool, but that will just be part of the new meta that will develop. And while I love that they've taken the feedback from the community that mining still needs more love, I don't honestly see how the proposed changes will address the actual criticism, that if you're profit motivated as opposed to RPing or just having a chilled time with your mates in a mole, there isn't a reason to vary things up. There are, I suppose, a couple of ways to address this that could even make it in for 3.19. One way would be to concentrate super valuable materials such as quant to a very specific location, making the risk of mining them go exponentially upwards. If there was just one moon, or even better, one location on one moon, where quant spawned, you could effectively get a truly dynamic version of Jumptown, where any org wishing to conduct a mining op might first have to fight to control that location versus other players and orgs. This could lead to some cool gameplay, particularly for those in orgs, but I fear it could lead to solo players or members of smaller orgs getting pushed out to the side. But another way to add some variety could be through mining missions. Maybe a spike in demand for copper at ArcCorp, for instance, could generate a mission where the ArcL1 and ArcL2 refinery stations will pay a bonus, like the ones that we got for med supplies as part of Ninetales lockdown. That could just be for every one SCU delivered up to X SCU, causing something of a gold rush or copper rush, as players and orgs quickly refitted their mining ships for copper mining and bolted across to Microtech where it's common to fill their boots and see if they can get a slice of the pie. So I hope you found this video interesting, and like I said, a bunch of it was just my opinions, and I'd be really keen to hear yours, so feel free to just let me know down in the comments whether you agree or disagree with me, doesn't matter. And if it was a good watch and you think I've earned it, consider hitting the all-important like and subscribe buttons to let the YouTube overlords know that I'm doing a good job and deserve a burrito-based treat. I really don't want any of my criticism to come across as overly negative or specifically a knock to Thorsten, Bastian and the rest of the teams they're working with. I do think these changes look really cool, and I can see how at the very least they're laying some of the foundations for that more developed multi-loot gameplay I'd love to see in the future. Also, Thorsten has given us a heads up on one of the best challenges out there for 3.19.
Added a little helper that basically tells you, hey, it is very doable, it's an easy mining approach, it's a challenging mining approach, or it's an impossible one. Because now there will be impossible one.
Game on, Thorsten. Game on. So with all that said, thanks very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.